Dear friends, today we have a very special tribute. Today is the Shloshim of one of the luminaries of our generation, one of the giants of our generation, Rabbi Adin Even-Israel. And in honor of his Shloshim, we have today with us his son, Rabbi Meni Even-Israel. Kol Tanchumai, and thank you so much for joining us today. And you know, Rabbi Benzion, I want to share with you, so many people speak, and we know yesterday was a big commemoration with Benjamin Netanyahu and with the world leaders about the Shloshim of your father, the true giant of our generation. But I want to start from something very personal. I never spoke to your father personally. I myself was born in Russia. I grew up in Eretz Israel. When I was 2 years old, we moved our family to Eretz Israel. And I remember when I was in 5th grade and we started to learn Talmud, the path for Talmud was through Rabbi Steinsaltz commentary on the Talmud. It was the book that opened me the Talmud when I was in the 5th grade. And then I started to learn Tanya. And I learned it as a child, but I cannot say I was connected. And I remember in my bar mitzvah, the present I received was the bi'ur shel Rabbi Adin Israel, the commentary of your father to the Tanya, that totally blew my mind and transformed my spirituality and my connection, understanding of this book. When I was 15, I was in Yeshiva in Kfar Chabad, and I was announced that Rabbi Adin Even-Israel coming to Farbrengen, coming to speak in Bet Knesset Merkazi in Kfar Chabad, and we all came to see Rabbi Steinsaltz. It was a big thing for us. So we're all coming and we see a short rabbi in a blue shirt, and he started to spin. Was asking, "Where's Rabbi Steinsaltz? Where's this is there?" And when I looked, I learned what is tzniut, what is humbleness. And when he spoke about humbleness. But when you when you heard it from him, it was a totally different effect on life. And he spoke about the incredible story, one of the many stories that he had with the Rebbe, when he had so many projects, so many books he was writing, over 60 volumes of the Talmud that he translated, and over 60 books that he published, if I'm not mistaken. I'm right?
But we have about 300 titles.
Over 300 titles that Rabbi Steinsaltz.
No difference, not a big deal, you know.
And I remember that story, and you can give me the details more correct, but that when he had so many projects and he didn't know which one, he was impossible for him to do it. And he asked the Rebbe, which of the projects I can stop to do so I will be able to do the other projects. And correct? This was the way? And the Rebbe, yeah.
The Rebbe was, first of all, the question we need to ask, the story is, as you said, he asked the Rebbe what to do with all these projects because it's too hard for him, it's too much for him. And the Rebbe answered, of course, he will add more. That was the Rebbe answer directly. But there's a question here. I mean, my father knew the Rebbe. I mean, you and I know, at least I know, I can't tell about you, but I'm sure you know too. If you ask the Rebbe a question like that, what do you expect? Of course, the Rebbe said to add. The Rebbe, all the Rebbe's work, all the Rebbe life and work was always to add more, right? The Rebbe said several times that every time he chooses to add, to ask the Hasidim something, is only when he knows that 50% will do it. And the Rebbe asks from us all the time to add more mitzvahs, to learn more, to do more, right? So what did my father think? Obviously, the Rebbe will not tell him to stop. So I questioned that with my father. Said, what was the Hava Amina? What was your thought? And he said, obviously the Rebbe will tell me to continue, but I wondered that maybe I'm going in the wrong direction. Maybe the fact that I'm also having a yeshiva, and I have a yeshiva in Russia, and I have a Talmud in French, and I have a Talmud in Hebrew, and I have this and this and that. Maybe it's not because I'm adding or not adding. Maybe what I'm doing is wrong thing. Maybe a person should be concentrated on one field. The Rebbe made very clear to several people that, when they wanted to, example, there was a group of Hasidim in France, were called the very famous, the group. and they came to the Rebbe and told the Rebbe they want to go to yeshiva, right? They became Baalei Tshuva, and and they want to make it. They want to go back to yeshiva, and the Rebbe prohibited them to do so. And very clear, you have a challenge, you have something to do in life, and if you want to learn Torah, it's in your free time, but you have to be in yeshiva. In my father's case, what the Rebbe wanted from him said, look, all the projects you have significant. And you cannot drop any of them because the challenge you have is to continue to do them. And it was really suitable to my father's personality. Father's personality was very broad.
Extremely.
And I think that's one of the most unique aspect that he has, was not just the fact that, again, he was humble to the nth degree. I mean, we're not talking about, the humble when a rabbi comes and doesn't want honor, and make all this kvetcherai, which you really know what it really meant is that you should give him a bigger check. It was not what he meant. When he was humble, he was really humble, and it wasn't because he doesn't know what his capabilities. He knew very well what he's capable of. But he came across and said, look, I'm here to serve the people. I'm here to do something different for the Jewish people. I'm here to change the way Judaism think. And therefore, I cannot be proud, I cannot be arrogant enough to say that I know better, that I am the best. And I will not do that. I will not underestimate myself, but I'm definitely know what's my challenge, and I'll play with it. And I think that is one of the most impressive and beautiful aspects of my father, dimensions of my father attributes.
It is true, and I remember that when I heard this story first time. So first of all, he told us, everybody, that never stop. You always need to demand from yourself more than you can. It was something that inspired me very much when I heard this first time. And your father was really extremely, as you said, extraordinary, because he knew everything. He wrote books, and not only that he wrote about the Talmud and Tanya and Rambam and Torah, but zoology, he had books, and you could speak to him about any topic in life. So how is really, and you felt this combination? Because some people think that it's impossible. And it is something that, and everybody who speaks about your father, this is one of the things that really so many, even Netanyahu when he spoke yesterday and others, they spoke about this unique combination.
First of all, you need to remember my father by birth was a genius. And by birth, he had very close to photographic memory. This is two talents that once you're born with them and you know how to use them, they give you a small edge. The problem is that a lot of time these kind of people who have this talent have no human connection. They completely become odd and bizarre and weird. My father had his own parts which he was unique and different, but in general he managed to successfully connect to people. He was successfully managed to engage normal human beings. Again, sometimes it drove him crazy. I mean, the way people are stupid and unintelligent, and that was an issue for him always. But again, smart people in general have a bigger problem with less intelligent people. It's part of the game. It's part of what they are.
Exactly.
So when you look in life, he always really, again, we can also talk about it later, and also what he brings in his last will and testament, as we call in Hebrew, as close to tzavar as we can get.
And it was written a long time before his death.
Written today, it was written 40 years ago, and believe me, I spent 30 days looking in all my files that maybe I'll find something more updated. I can't find anything. It seems that he was never afraid of death.
The biggest fear of person.
He never took that seriously enough. I mean, he never thought about death as a serious event. And the only time he thought about it was when he actually went through a major operation to remove a tumor. It was benign, but again, it was very dangerous. He had a Gaucher disease, and his spleen, that is normally is 100 grams, was about 22 pounds. Okay, it went up from about 200 grams, 200 to whatever, 3 ounces to more or less to 22 kilos, 22 pounds. It was a huge thing. So that was the time, I think, that he felt the most that he's about to depart this earth. And he writes, and he wrote this half a will, if you will, it'll be a half a will. And he actually gave it to one of his best friends, passed away since then, of course, to keep it and guard it in a case of it. But one of the missions and one of the messages that he talked about was the concept of combining 4 different elements of the world together. He talked about combining the God of Israel, the people of Israel, the world in its entirety, and the Torah. And he specifically, in my opinion, put the world, the Mitzias, the world, the physical existence prior to the Torah. Because he believed that the key to understand Torah, the key to really live Torah properly, is to appreciate the world around us. Now, he's not the first one to say it. Of course, the Torah is the first one to say that when he come to Kriyat Shema, right, which is a very basic text from all second purposes, right? When we're going to Shema, the first thing is you said, talk about God of Israel. Then talking about the love of Israel. This is the love of the Jewish people, right? And then what he tells you is go outside and feed your animal, right? Then I will give you food and this and this and this. And after that, you pray. After that, you do the mitzvot. After that, become the mitzvah of tzitzit. That, I think, with my father, again, I don't know if that's where he got this idea, but it's definitely there. And that's where he grew up. That's where we all grew up in the house. Again, more or less, and sometimes was easier, sometimes was harder. But as in general, that was his agenda, to combine the world with spirituality, combine the world with the Torah, but not nevertheless to combine all of those together. As he referred to in the letter, he said, I would like these 4 elements to be exactly like God's holy name. God's holy name, as we all know, Yud Kei Vav Kei, is a name that is inseparable. He's unspeakable, unfallible. He's the perfect name. And that should be the combination of those 4 elements should be together as the perfection of one purpose in life.
This is amazing. And this is really was your father's legacy and your father's symbol. He was a symbol of this combination of, but as you said, your father had things that other people didn't have. So what the tools, or when he was as a father to his children, what he was demanding, what he was guidance?
Well, first of all, we again, this is not a secret. I mean, we hardly saw him. The man was working very hard. So again, even that concept that your father is working and he's willing to commit his life for the work has a benefit. Most of us, me, my brother, my sister, we made the decision to marry people that family is very important for us, and we're much more around the family, clearly. But the message was very clear. But even as a child, again, I said, when I have this last 30 days, I didn't make any decisions yet, official decision about what to do. Most of the stuff is already said, so I don't have to work hard on to finding new things. But I really tried to spend time finding my own personal memories with my father, my own things that I can be connected to. And I have one memory that actually was the good thing about his memory, that it keeps happening. Sometimes you have a memory, a story that happened once, and you have to put your mind in it, and you have to remember, this story happened on a regular basis. I sleep an average a night very little. Very little. I have a hard time sleeping, always had. So as a child, I'm sure you had this experience too. You wake up in the night and you heading to the kitchen or the bathroom or to find something to food or to do what you have to do. That's a natural of the nature of the beast. I remember throughout my childhood, and this is dozens of times, my parents' house is very narrow and long. So my room, the kids' room, was here, and my parents' room was there, and you have to go through their house. So when you get out of the kids' room, my father was the living room. In the living room, it was old IKEA table. I mean, it's the world record of IKEA table surviving. This is from 90, who knows when. And my father used to sit there every night. I mean, again, it happened many times. And he was holding, there was a Gemara open, I think it was a Gemara, most likely Gemara open, or maybe other book, a science fiction book attached to it, and a pipe. Now, as a child, the impression you get from it is crucial. It's become essential to your life that when you read example, or when you learn something, that you need to take a break. That's the main purpose. If you need to have a place to escape, to think, to have this thing, you have something aside. 2, you learn that, again, every information, every text, every concept that we have is something that we can learn from it. We have, it's funny because according to the legend, Isaac Asimov, the author, Asimov, is somewhat of a relation. I don't know if it's a third cousin, fourth cousin, but as my mother, Asimov, there is some connection there. I'm not sure if it's second cousin, third cousin, but it's close.
This connection.
And his contribution, Isaac Asimov also was a genius, also was a prolific writer, even have a commentary on the Tanakh. Again, a prolific writer, but it's the same concept, is that you need to bring everything around inside. That was one experience. Then you had in Shabbat, actually Friday night, he was always at home. I mean, of course, there was a period of time when you had to fly, and flying was more than, then you couldn't take a flight like today for 2 days. I mean, you took a flight for a much longer period of time. But Friday night used to be with the family, and especially when he came back from a trip, used to make it an issue to explain and to talk and to continuously explain us what he did, what he didn't do, how was it. So that was a very interesting thing. But that was the message. The message also was, don't be rigid. Don't go to the extreme. There is no reason. There is a way and there's a method to be observant, to listen to the word of God, to keep whatever God wants from you, and still not to be close-minded, to be caring, to be awakened, to understand that the world around us is something important. I give you an example.
Please.
You can take the best example is the internet. We are proving now that you can use online video on a platform that is ranging from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter to make something positive.
100%.
That is, again, what the Rebbe wanted, and that's my father was very clear. You don't become rigid. The first time when I could have used a phone to pray, I thought it was a great idea. Just the fact that, as you know, our tefillin, the Lubavitch style tefillin, as the biggest things ever exist. And the talis, the wool talis, doesn't help the way here. You have a big thing. Now, if you add to this Chitas and Rambam and Tanya and Gemara, you carrying the house with you. Today, you have everything online, you have everything digital, and that is, again, it's something we do, and that's we can definitely talk about it. But that's what he wanted. He wanted the world to be part of what we do, and that's what we educated. The other thing we had is a memory. My father didn't know how to cook anything. His abilities in the kitchen were limited to 2 things: hard-boiled eggs and coffee. And the coffee was 8 sugars, a sliver of coffee, and milk and water. That was it. That was the extent. And he always used to say that compared to his father, he's a big chef. So again, I know to cook a bit better than that, but that's my own problems apparently. But when you woke up in the morning, his schedule was that he prayed at home, and except Shabbat, of course. But then in the morning, after he made himself the egg and the coffee, he used to sit down and go through his daily routine of learning. I have to say, when you look at it, it was very scary. There was a Bavli, Yerushalmi, Shulchan Aruch, Rambam, Midrashim, and that was on a daily basis. And he used to make this every Sukkos. He used to make. He used to take the lulav in the end of Yom Tov and make I'm calling a book holder from it. And that was a big deal, and he used to keep them in his books throughout the year. So that was the education we got. Diversity, openness, and learning. And the idea that you open a book and you learn and you read, in a way, again, as I said, he was very talented and he had the gifts. When he read Talmud, the way I read science fiction, or even not even science fiction, the way I read novels, he read Gemara and Mishnah and Tanakh like I read Harry Potter. Seriously, the man read it fluidly, and you can see also that the images that went through him, like Abaye, Rava, the major scholars of Yosef, of Shmuel, he treated them not as family. I don't want to say that, but definitely treated them as partners. He knew what's going on. When he gave a speech in Talmud, which sometimes was because he used to pick up points to make a point for the audiences. I'll give you a story in a moment. But when he gave a class about Ya'al Kagam, which is the 6 arguments between Abaye and Rava, which is very basic learning, I recommend everybody to learn them. They're very good learning method and really bring almost a lot of examples of the Talmud. When he talks about Abaye and Rava, it wasn't Abaye and Rava in this particular page or this particular statement. It was all the Abaye and Rava. It was part of the conversation. He treated them well. So one day, this is a story, and then I'll let you ask more questions after. He came to Italy, and apparently I was not there. This is a story I just heard. He was exhausted. So apparently he gave a class to the new rabbinical school in Rome. Apparently everybody was tired. It was Monday morning. In Italy, Monday morning is a non-existing time. And he fell asleep a little bit, and they fell asleep a little bit. And then he decided to teach the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah, the dealing with the size of the sides of the Sukkah, which is really a painful learning, talking about measurement and proving
mathematical.
So by the end of the conversation, when he saw that really that was it, he said, look, we need to understand that the importance of learning these details was not because the rabbis really care if you make this size or that size. It's to show that our connection and the information we receive from God, which explained in the Tanya, in chapter Dalet and chapter Hey, 4 and 5 of the Tanya, that when you're dealing with the garbs of the king, you're actually dealing with the garbs of the king. You're actually holding the king in your hand. So whatever the kings give you, even if it's not maybe what you look for, maybe it's not the amazing royal garb, it's still something God wants. And that's the reason we have to deal with them. That was his message then. Anyway, I found it very entertaining that, the situation.
It's very similar to what the Baal Shem Tov was saying, the famous story with the Baal Shem Tov and the cantor that was so happy when he was doing Val Chet and speaking about the sins, and the community was complaining to the Baal Shem Tov, why you're singing so happily when you're asking forgiveness for your sins. It says when you clean the palace of the king, you need to be happy. When you do anything connected to the king. So I'm sorry, yeah.
No, good.
But by the way, when we speak about this diversity, when we speak about Orthodox family, about children of the great rabbi, it's not something very, let's say, natural and so much accepted. Because very often people, and again, we need to put the limits for a family, the structure, how you
Look, again,
it's one of the uniqueness of your father that
yeah,
could see it in
no
our,
question about it. No question about it. My father, his way of educating was not educating us. And basically, he did not interfere in our education. He did let us know whatever we wanted to do, he could have done. But you had awe. I mean, you came to the house, you understood that the man is different. You understood that other parents are not like him. And you understood that you have to behave in a certain way. That was accepted, when you go public with him, you have to behave, even though he never said anything. He never said, it was not part of his repertoire to do so. He was much more, by definition, you understood it. When you meet a government governor, a prime minister, a major rabbi, a major scholar, you behave because his situation demands that you behave. Very obviously that's the only way around it. But it's maybe that is something that we have to talk about. Maybe it's something that we as rabbis, we as scholars, we as people of the community have to ask. I mean, even if you look in the Rebbe's life, right? We all know that the Rebbe went to university. So the Rebbe went at a secular education. The Rebbe was very well aware of the world around him. The Rebbe was very, him and his brothers learned foreign languages all the time. That was part of the thing they did. They were noble family. They understood who they are and what they are. They gave a certain amount of security in the house, this kind of parents, this kind of people. Gave a certain amount of security in the house that you felt comfortable. There was no fear of the outside world. Look, I had when I was 21, 22, immediately after I got ordained, maybe a year after, half a year later, my father sent me to meet one of the archbishops of Jerusalem. Okay? You sit down with a guy who's 20 years your senior, 25 years my senior, smart, intelligent. My father did not have to worry me about the conversation if Judaism and Christianity is right. Obviously, there was no issue. There was no fear. There was no
fear.
There was no, obviously you deal with people the way they are. And my father, and we were in Washington, and he met a woman named Aziza El-Hibri. Aziza El-Hibri, she is allegedly, again, not our legend, their legend, is a granddaughter of Muhammad. Okay? She's very powerful, very liberal, but she's allowed to, right? Because she has a famous family. But my father, you come to conversation, my father was not afraid. There was not a fear of, my God, I'm losing who I am because I'm going. He had this ability to install in us, and I think that's what he tried to install in the students, and installing in everybody around him, that acceptance, openness, understanding, faith, believe in what you do. I mean,
not to be afraid to ask the questions. And
we all say, you ask somebody, why does he go to shul? People tell you, I go to shul because I want to show my kids what a shul look like. One day we have to find a child that everybody does everything for him. I never found him. There's always, I didn't do this, didn't do that. In general, we really have to take it seriously. And again, it's not easy for me either. Judaism is something that's supposed to be flowing through our veins. Something that we should care about it all the time. We should know that, and we understand these challenges. Then our text that are core of our understanding, a core of what we do, have problems, like anything else in the world. There's a contradictions. There's stories, we know never happened. That's not me. That's the Talmud says that. And listen, it's a story. We brought us a story. It's a famous debate. Is the story of Job ever happened? Or it was only an allegory? We have question who wrote Mishlei, who wrote Shir Shirim. We know that because the Gemara brings it already. And that's the same question. Because Our people were not stupid. Our people wanted to be with the world. And you can and to want to be that our connection to God is always, and again, this is also something the Baal Shem Tov said, right? The only thing you're afraid is God. And the Alter Rebbe said the other side. The Alter Rebbe said, you're always with God. It doesn't matter what you do. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew, and more so, even when it comes to a time when a Jew can cross the line, God forbid, we know that he's still there. Obviously, it's not the way we want to see him. We want to be part of what we do. We want him to be part of what we believe in. We want him to be strongly affiliated with what we do. But a Jew stays a Jew. And I think my father was never afraid of it. And I think what's part of it is even his blue shirt. Okay, take a stupid thing as a blue shirt. Okay, so first of all, as you can imagine, my father never went to buy his own shirt. You can imagine that never happened. It never gonna happen. He bought it. I buy my own shirts. He did it. But I think part of to show that I don't need to have more protection. I don't worry about what people will say about me. I'll be comfortable who I am. I will believe in God Almighty, and I'll believe in the Jewish people, and I'll believe in the world, and I'll believe in the Torah, and I'll bring them together. That none of this will bother me. I remember going with him in France. Again, I didn't have the privilege to be with him in Russia, but the privilege with him in France and in Italy and in America. His first order of business when we came to a new place was to go to a museum. And the other thing he did was this constant working. I mean, it was amazing. I used to come, I used to fly with him, to New York. The infamous El Al flight of midnight. Yes. You arrive to New York at 5 a.m. I feel like a zombie. I just want to sleep. And he has a meeting, 7 a.m. meeting, 9 a.m. meeting. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like in Israel, he goes to sleep for 2 hours, Schlafstunde, sleeping for 2 hours. And then at 6 o'clock, there's more meetings. Meanwhile, 50 years, dying here. That was the man. And it gave you the amount of energy and amount of hope that he represents is unbelievable.
It's incredible. But that your father didn't have the fear, and this is what his uniqueness is understood. But when you grow a family and you have children, how you instill in them this? Because you always have the fear that, it's about the combination. We're all about this, where to find the middle, where to find that not to lose the balance. So was any words that he was telling you, anything that he did to ensure it, or just his image?
Again, it's very complex. I'm personally not a psychologist or psychiatrist, and my advice is my own advice only. Here's a disclaimer, will be around here in the bottom. If you consume it, it's your responsibility. Look, we need to remember that the kids are their own life. As much as we can try to control them and put them in a box, some do and some don't. As we see, some kids are very successful in school. They come to school in the morning, they take a test. If they go to yeshiva, they learn Gemara all day, they learn Chassidus. And some kids are not. They're just not like that. And my father had this ability of, I don't have that. I have a much harder time with my own kids on this, to let them go, to say, look, I'm not worried about it. And you always question about it. Again, it's much harder for me personally. Really, it helps that we tell our kids 100 times what to do. Has really helped? The answer is probably not. Most likely doesn't help. But yes, we have responsibility to teach our kids what's the borders. We have to tell a kid what's yes, what's wrong. In my father's case, was so obviously that what he does is correct, and you got stopped there. But most of us have to articulate. But I'll give you another question. I have a better question than that. When the last time that you or had a conversation at home about God? Just imagine Friday night we have a kiddush. We just say kiddush. We have bread. We're not hungry anymore. after every kid shares the idea of the way, whatever you do in your house, the father, the mother, or both will start talking about what is God. I don't know anybody ever done it, but that's the most important concept. Our kids, we're telling them, we just said this, we just told them they have to believe in God. We don't even do that. That's a conversation we need to have with our kids. Conversation, seriously, that we have to find, we talk about Chassidus, Memalakom, Sovkolim. Are we really living with it? Are we really, this is part of our life? Do we understand it when we see a fellow Jew? He represents the part of our neshama, that he represents, this explained chapter Lamed Beis. I'm talking about in reality, I'm not talking about the theory. The theory I know very well. That was what my father talked about was really, and I think going back to what we started with from the Rebbe, is to be defined. To understand what you're doing is not wrong. What you're doing, you have to believe in, you have to care about it, you have to feel strongly in your heart, strongly in your soul, that what you're doing is the right thing. And what you're doing is something that can bring good to the world. Otherwise, what's the point?
And he spoke in the house about God. You had this conversation with him?
No, that's exactly my point. It's not. But that's exactly my point. The conversation I had with him, again, and it's also divided to two parts of my life. As a child, it was very hard to have a conversation with him. He just did not relate to us as children. As adults, I was not at home. And when I came back to Israel, I worked for him. So conversation took a whole different perspective on what life is and how you do business and what's the goal of what's the agenda. But when you had a conversation with him in general, he knew that something is wrong. He knew that there's issues. He knew that there's something that he wants to bring forward. And he said, okay, so what are we doing with that? Why are we doing that? And again, also at work, he never gave up, not just in the theory. He said, do it again. And try to do this way and try to do that way, and we try to cut this and try to move this and change everything around. He was the type of person who never stopped. The conversation at home, again, when he was at home, the conversation was what he did this week and where we're going to do. But when you saw him daven, example, when you actually saw him daven, example, on Shabbat, in the Tzemach Tzedek Shul, in the old city, he could have stood up and say Shemona Esrei for 35 minutes, 45 minutes, without moving. That gave you a notion, again, later when you start reflecting on it, not when you see it and you want to go home, right? When you're a bit older, when you went home already and you saw it, it gave you an awe. It gave you a concept like, this is a way to pray. There's somebody actually can grab and contemplate the way it's supposed to be done. If take an hour and a half shachris, so take an hour and a half shachris. That was the message. The message was, stop with the messing around and do it. Do what's supposed to be done.
The best parenting that could be is to be a self-example. And this was your father. He was allowed everything, but he showed the right way. And probably this would so much affected not only the children, but also so many students all over the world that affected. And I want now to speak about the connection of your father with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That was so special. It was so unique. He was a unique Chassid. And I know there's also a unique story about yourself. So you share with us.
Sure, I will share whatever I can. I mean, it's not secret. It just, they mentioned some of the stuff you need more l'chaim to talk about.
This is one of the limitations of Zoom and for online.
Yeah, I know. And limitation, also limitation, the fact there's no flights. You can't get a decent bottle of mashke here. But seriously speaking, my father's relation with the Rebbe started when my father was very young. We just, it was just now in the Shiva, we found this letter. Somebody mentioned a letter the Rebbe sending about my father to Sasonkin, saying to him, there's a young man that needs your help. Watch him. Maybe he has to leave the house and to give him a place to be because he's struggling in something. My father was less than 70. Okay? The Rebbe never, again, it's not completely true in my case, but the Rebbe in general did not care about a 17 years old. In a sense of Rebbe care about everybody. I don't mean that. I mean that in the checking out and approaching, because I don't think anybody informed him. I don't think anybody told him, hey, by the way, there's a guy over here. Now, then my father went to yeshiva. He went to what was that? There was a Pardes. It was not even Kfar Chabad then. And he was there for 3 weeks. The entire experience in yeshiva was 3 weeks. And that apparently was enough for him, and he made a decision. Later, he fell in love with Chassidut in general. In his mind, Chassidut was the only way to bring people together. The sense of Judaism, the revolution that he saw the Baal Shem Tov did, was so unique in his mind that he really believed that is that what he's aiming to do a revolution, and two, that way of learning. So was a very famous a descendant of a Hasidic family, Rabbi Avram Chen. Rabbi Avram Chen was from the famous Chen family, and he was teaching a Tanya class for the who is who in Yerushalayim. The president, the government, he was very famous. And once he passed away, that particular position of teaching this particular shiur went to my father. So my father became very close to the president of Israel, Shazar. And throughout this process and his training, he became very close to basically all these major teachers in Judaism were Chabad Hasidim. There were Rabbi Eliezrov, Rabbi Sasonkin. He was also somewhat close to Shlomo Chaim Kesselman. So, and there was an amazing thing about it that he gave example. His even in Hillel, in a Hillel house, when you went to look 50-something years ago what program was playing, my father teaching Chassidus was one of those things. He got very close. I think all what you see from the letters from the Rebbe really gave him guidance of what to do, what not to do, to be, what not to be. And the unique concept is that the Rebbe treated him, I think, completely different than anybody else I know.
In what sense?
In a sense of, like, again, maybe other people, again, I'm limited to what my knowledge is, and I'm sorry to this. I'm not trying to be humble. I'm really not that knowledgeable about the relationship of everybody in the world with the Rebbe. For example, when we mentioned earlier, my father had this operation 40 years ago, and this operation was a life-threatening operation. It was, in that time, they still used to do a 26-hour operation. It was so famous, this operation, that every doctor, literally every doctor who was internal medicine, was around the age 65 today, 60 older, was in that operation. He went from all the country to see. So, first of all, the Rebbe did not let my father do the operation for many years. Like for 3 or 4 years, Rebbe refused to let my father do the operation. And then when my father asked where to do the operation, Rebbe said you should do the operation in the land of Israel because God is watching it and God is witnessing it, right? There's a famous line, Hey Hashem Elokecha bo mireshis shana v'dachis shana, to do it in Israel. But then eventually the Rebbe gave permission. Now, that is, again, in the night before, my father is writing this letter. And in the morning, my father went to the hospital. And my mother, what she can do, she have a child they have to take care of, she has to send the child to the kindergarten. Kindergarten opened at 7. My mother was there at 5 to 7 and waited from the kindergarten to open. I went in. By the time she went back home to take her stuff to go to the hospital, there was a message from the Rebbe. Don't ask me exactly how it worked in those days. I'm not sure they were, but again, the Rebbe said, I daven already.
What was the message?
The message was, I davened already. Rebbe said, palalti kvar. Now, Rebbe did not say Azker Latziyun. He did not say, it was almost, again, I'm afraid to say this, we both might be killed for this. It's almost friendly. The acquaintance level was very, very, very close. Now, my father told me that the first time he came to the Rebbe, he made a very clear decision. It was Tafshin Lamed. He's not going to ask the Rebbe anything physical. No Gashmius whatsoever. And of course, the Rebbe always asked him about Gashmius. It was clear. The Rebbe always asked how this and how was that. And the Rebbe brachos to my father also were very, very physical. Said, Fum Tzara Agra, you should see it. My father said, in the world to come. And said, no, in this world. And it was very, very, they were very, very, I want to say close, but it's different. My father had, and you can see it in the videos, it's not me saying it, it's in the videos, you can see it in pictures. My father was in awe of the Rebbe. My father said, my father was not a stupid man. He knew who he is. He knew how great, not really, but he knew what his status is. He knew what talent is. And still, when he comes to the Rebbe, you see that he's a henchback, and he's trying to do it as fast as he can. He doesn't want to bother the Rebbe. He wants to move as fast. Unbelievable. So, normal people, they ask you, did you regret anything not asking your father? So I went and asked my father, how was the Yechidus of the Rebbe? According to our Cheshbon, and what we know only from stories and other people's story, my father spent 30 hours with the Rebbe.
Wow.
Now, I went and asked my father, right? I might as well ask him. My father told me the very famous yet Polish line, this is on the need to know basis, and you don't need to know. I have very limited knowledge of what happened in most of the Zechiras, but I can tell you that one of the times, my mother and my father went to the Rebbe, and my father opened the conversation by saying to the Rebbe, I think after they gave the pan and so on and so forth, part of the conversation tell the Rebbe that he has a very hard time writing. Now, my mother didn't say what the Rebbe, God forbid. Again, my mother holds the same notion of you need to know. But the fact that this is a man who wrote, I said we have about 310 titles, and he tells the Rebbe he has a hard time writing. If he has a hard time writing, what are we going to say? So, but back about the relationship. So there's a few things. First of all, the Rebbe used to, from time to time, to ask my father questions, in a sense of about a couple, if he knows about them. Even my father claimed, again, I don't have any proof for this, but as might as well you quote my father. He claimed that when the Rebbe talks about Mivtza Tefillin, before the Rebbe went public, there was a problem. Because Rebbe understood very well that what we're going to do with the women. And my father claimed, again, I don't have any way to prove it, and I'll take my father's word, that was his advice to talk about Nero Shabbos Kodesh.
Wow.
Now, I have no idea. I don't know how to prove it or disprove it. But again, it's an interesting story. If it happens, it's amazing. If it didn't happen, it's also amazing. But the fact that the Rebbe called is very obvious. Now we know. I'll give you another story. Again, this is it's a good story. As might as well. My father was very well known for his official leftist opinions about the land of Israel. Father grew up in a nice communist home, and he believed in giving back territories. He believed in doing peace with the Arabs. All this lovely, and apparently it happens now. Just now, our neighbors have to go to United Arab Emirates to do so, and apparently that's all peace. So when the Rebbe came out, and that was 67, after the 60 war, my father made his claim. I have to give back territories. It was very well known. I got, of course, people in my school in Lud were not as happy with the fact that that's the story, but they didn't know the entire story. So when the Rebbe came out with his official opinion on having back territories, my father had an interview, one of the newspaper in Israel, one of the decently important newspaper. Can't tell you the most important, less important, but a good newspaper. Yeah. And my father asked my father, what's his opinion? And my father said, my opinion is to give back territory, give him back territories. Said, however, I concede my opinion for the Rebbe's opinion. And if the Rebbe say you can't give back territories, you don't give back territories. Okay, that's by itself is a unique concept.
100%.
Right?
So however, his opinion and accepted it, even so he not agreed. And
the week later, or the next whatever day or so, I don't know that timeline, there's a phone call from the Mazkiras. And the Rebbe told my father, again, I don't know if it was on phone, it was on the Mazkirim, again, I don't know the details, and we really have nobody really to ask these days. The Rebbe asked my father and told my father that he doesn't want him only to accept his opinion, he wants my father to change his opinion. Now, it's very close, I understand, but again, it's a unique concept. I don't know anybody else the Rebbe said it to. Now, I think for the Hasidim was very hard. It was very hard. My father was if I may, again, I don't use anything negative. My father was not a Lubavitcher Chassid. He was the Rebbe's Chassid. And I don't know how many people can say that openly. I mean, he did not conform to the stigmas and the ideas and the movement. He was his own man. But when the Rebbe said something to him or not to him, he did it. Now, I asked him once, well, how come he doesn't say chitas? Now I'm thinking about it, how stupid can I be? For him to say chitat is what takes me an effort to say. For him, he does it like that. For him to doing the Chumash, he's there. Doing the Rambam, he does it anyway. It was not even an issue. He lived with this. It's a whole different concept again. So that's the last story. Then, the last story, I'll leave with that.
But by the way, if I may ask, so when the Rebbe said that he need to change his opinion, what was the end?
I don't know.
Okay.
As far as I know, he publicly said like the Rebbe. Privately, privately, he was well known as to his old opinions, and he did not go after people and tell them you're wrong. That was not his agenda.
100%.
But I had a conversation with him once about it, and he said, the argument between me and the Rebbe was not even really in practicality. Because he said, I believe the only time you're allowed to give back territories is when there's true peace. He said the chance of having true peace is so slim, it's close to zero, so it's might as well say you can give back territories. The Rebbe opinion was, do not talk about giving back territories, because if you talk about giving back territories, you might give it away. That was Rebbe also to Rabin and so to other people. So the last story I have about my father, again, I'll talk about then about the changing name and my sickness. But my father, I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I think 7. I have to say, I think 7. And my father was a scholar and resident in Princeton University. It's about in New Jersey. It's about an hour from the city, more or less. And I remember the first week we're here, we stayed by my mother, aunt, and uncle in Montgomery Street. And my father told me, and we just came back from the flight. I already slept. Clearly, he probably wasn't. And we went. My father said, let's go and buy something for Shabbat. No idea what does it mean. My father never bought anything, so I don't know what it means. He said, let's go buy something for Shabbat. Not even sure he had a jacket on. Again, I was very young. I don't remember the results, but we start walking. So Crown Heights is a square. Montgomery is parallel to Eastern Parkway, where the Rebbe used to be. My father told me as we start walking, my father told me, I'm 7. I don't want to see the Rebbe now. This is Friday afternoon, okay? I don't want to see the Rebbe now. I said, okay. I mean, what do you do? I'm happy because we're about to go buy candies in the Nash store. And I'm very excited. We're about to get candies. I know I'm in a big America. It's I'm very excited. So of course we started walking, and my father bought whatever we need to buy. I don't remember what it was. Of course, because it's my father, he forgot that the way back to Montgomery is back in Kingston and back to Montgomery. Father, of course, walks through Eastern Parkway. And what do you know? The Rebbe is coming out.
Oh.
Okay? So my father immediately, like every good husband does, sent me to, there was a line there, and the steps, the kids used to stand.
Mm-hmm.
And my father sent me to stand there and say the psukim. The Rebbe stopped near me, and the Rebbe asked me if I know the psukim. I said, no, I had absolutely no idea about the Rebbe. Wants me, I can tell you, my father helps. Don't know the psukim. Rebbe gave me, I think, $50 to me to learn the psukim. I think by now I know them. I think, not sure, but I think I know them now. But then he calls my father. He gestured my father.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't remember if it was up on the stairs or down on the stairs, but they stood there and they talked. Now, clearly my father was extremely uncomfortable. I don't know if it was because he didn't go to mikveh. I don't know why he was uncomfortable. I don't know what. I think he was just not ready. But they sat down there and they talked. It was a conversation. Again, I was 7 years old. They spoke in Yiddish. I don't no idea what it talked about. If I remember correctly, they argue about a line in Radak.
Okay.
My father, and I think that they argue. Again, it's only assumption. I'm not sure it's true. It's only assumption. My father is besides being very well known for his commentary on the Gemara. My father also wrote a small commentary on the entire Tanakh or the Bible, available on Amazon and KoranPublishing.com. And he always took, and that was his method throughout life. He always took the most readable, more acceptable understanding of the text for people, not necessarily what is the most peaceful, more obvious. Really, what he thought is the most authentic, close to the text, and readable. So the problem is that some of the commentaries are not as popular. As we know, Jews throughout history, we changed some amount of commentaries due to our lovely relationship with other religions around. My father was not afraid, so he took sometimes opinions of the Radak, which is alone. Radak, as we know, Radak was very big of a warrior, and his commentary was, I really don't care about the neighbors, and I'll write whatever I think is correct, and even if the commentary might be helping them, it's not our intention, and therefore you have a problem. It's your problem, not my problem. So I think that's what it talked about. Again, I don't have a way to prove it. Again, that was part of the relationship that they had, and I think it was very unique.
It is.
Does anybody else has it? I don't know. I'm sure other people have in their own way. Even my father's famous speech that he gave in Tafshinun in 770 was done in Yiddish, in a good Yiddish, which already upset enough people. And 2, he spoke about the need to do more. And that pissed off, sorry to use this language, another X amount of the society. And the fact that the Rebbe almost very shortly after said exactly the same things, that we're not doing enough, and we have to do everything. We already clean always shine the buttons, and Mashiach is just waiting. That pissed off another certain amount of one, because the fact that you are right, to forgive somebody for a mistake,
Much easier.
one thing. To prove that somebody is correct, that's much harder, much harder. And I think that was my father. That was my father in every shape and form, and that was a relationship. Now, I truly believe that the relationship that he had is a relationship everybody should aspire to. Some people told me, asked me personally, what is my feeling about the Rebbe? Now, I find it entertaining to ask me. I was I was 20 when the Rebbe passed away. Almost 20 when the Rebbe passed away, and I did have my own experience with the Rebbe. But I told people the way I was taught about the Rebbe, again, not directly, by passing, was I miss him. It's not about his greatness. It's not about the Brendan, not about another Maimer, another Sikh. No, I missed him as again, I hope I won't be killed, as a person. I missed him in a sense, as a secondary father.
100%.
No, that's what I miss. That's what I care about. And that was the education my father gave me. And the reason I know that, when he passed away, my father was in a hospital for another operation. The man was very fragile, and he had hip replacement. That was Gimel Tammuz.
Mm-hmm.
And my father started crying. That was the second time in my life. Again, after the stroke, he cried more, but that had to do with the stroke, not more with the... second time in my life I saw my father crying. And the first one was about his mother. So my assumption, my association, is that it was not because we missed the Rebbe only as the Rebbe, but really what we missed is a father figure, somebody that we're looking up to, and it's somebody we can tell his sorrows and a success. That's one thing, Rebbe, and then I think I don't know again what's a time constraint, but the Rebbe always told people throughout his career, it's not fair that the Rebbe not use his language, it's very common language. Rebbe said it's not proper that people when they have sorrows, they write me. When they have issues, they write me. But when they have something positive and something good happen, then they forget me completely. That is something that my father always, when he sat down with my son for his bar mitzvah, we were, for my father and my son putting tefillin, first time putting tefillin, went to the oil. And my father was teaching my son how to write pan. Said, I don't know how to write pan. He never taught me how to write pan, but this might as well. There's opportunity here to teach my son, right? It's a brilliant of a moment here, brilliant. And I told my father, what, it's a teaching. So I said to him, write the Rebbe whatever you want. Whatever you want. But he said, it's very important, before you asking for anything, give the Rebbe something good news. Doesn't matter. My football team won.
Before you start to ask anything. Beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Give the Rebbe some happy news. By the way, that's... Even in Shmoneh Esrei, that's what we do. We're starting with, God, you're great. God, you're amazing. God, you do... and then
Thank you, Madani. And then...
My life sucks. Help me out here. My office is going through troubles. Help me out here. That is the uniqueness.
Amazing.
That was my father.
This is unique. This is really amazing. And I know we are time constraint, but I want to ask you about, if you can, without the L'chaim, but the L'chaim virtually, about the story of yourself with the Rebbe.
You're not going to let me go, huh? You're not going to let me off. Okay.
If it's possible.
No, it's fine. I'll give the short version, and you invite me again. Mitzvah Hashem. We have a whole conversation about it. So when I was 15 and a half, which is exactly, you can make the math, how old I am, exactly 30 years exactly from today, passed, I was diagnosed with AML, which is a very nasty form of leukemia. The percentage of my survival is debatable between me, my sister, and my brother and my mother. How much percentage I had to survive? It was 2.5%, 12%, 8%. It was definitely in the lower numbers of existence. And this is Erev Yud Beis Tammuz, and I've been diagnosed, and you have to go to automatically to treatment. So we asked the Rebbe what to do. Treatment begins because there's no choice. The Rebbe said immediately. The Rebbe said Refuah Shleima immediately. We thought it's Thursday afternoon. Okay, Thursday afternoon we were getting the first answer. Friday, the Maskiris called to check how am I doing. And my father and mother said Rebbe was on the other line. And I wasn't there, I was in the hospital. I was sick for 3 months. Now, throughout this process, again, I don't know why, definitely because of my father, because I don't have any merit, so it must be my father. Throughout the process, anybody who went through the Rebbe, my cousins, my family, my father friends, my mother friends, their neighbors, they went through the Rebbe was gracious and overflowing with brachas. Refuah Shleima, Refuah Shleima, Askel Tzion, long life, everything. Which is, again, unique as it comes by definition. It is also unique, in itself. And then the doctors, when he got to the same situation after I did my first course of chemotherapy, the doctors start talking about bone marrow transplant. Bone marrow transplant is a process that what you do is you take bone marrow from a donor, and you basically nuke the bone marrow, and then you nuke the person, you make him completely that he has nothing left, and then you're trying to reignite the system. It's exactly like rebooting a computer. Because what happened, one of the reasons you have cancer is that your DNA, instead of creating the cells properly, it does something wrong. There's a bug in the system. And instead of creating proper cells, it creates bizarre cells, and then the body attacks them. So the idea is when you do a bone marrow transplant is to start the process. Clearly, technology got better, and again, I don't even know what's the percentages today, and I'm not really interested. For the moment, I hope I will never need to know. So the percentage in that time was, if you have external donors, it's about something like 35%, 50%, and if you have your own donation, which happens sometimes if you don't have enough donors, that's the reason I recommend everybody to go and donate bone marrow. The chances are, if it's your own private donation, about 35%. Now, chemotherapy, again, I don't wish it on anybody, including my enemies, which I don't have, but I don't wish it to anybody. It's a nasty process. Even though it got much better today, it's still, God is very creative, and the doctors apparently have God keys, and they know how to be creative too, and it's really nasty work, and you feel bad, and so on and so forth. So the idea as a child of 15 and a half, middle of puberty, middle of being a teenager, telling you to go for another set of chemotherapy that the doctors are less than the positive and less than, they're not even sure to do any difference, I was not happy, clearly. So my father, being intellectual he was, went and asked his friends and his colleagues, and he went to this medical school, that medical school, he went to get advice from this guy and that guy. Basically, went and did the research of it. The problem was that the world was in a debate if I should do bone marrow transplant. It depends on the protocol of the doctors. To make the very long story short, we asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, look, you should stay in the land of Israel and use exactly the same language that you used with my father. and you should stay in the land of Israel, the land when God is watching it from the beginning of the year till the end of the year, which is exactly the same language used 40 years before my father. Not 40 years,
Yeah.
whatever the amount of years before. And then he continued to say, Shev al ta'aseh adif. And the reason he put it on, and again, I gave you the condition, he said it is Shev al ta'aseh adif, and that was his view on it.
So don't do
it. Better not to do anything. And again, this is not a unique horror from the Rebbe, in the sense of the Rebbe position was that anything that's interfering with the body, a procedure is doing. The Rebbe, in general, that was the opinion. But here, clearly, the doctors were a bit opposed to this.
100%.
And then we got all kind of comments from, the semi to the religious guy who tried to explain me logically that the Rebbe, is an old man who live in New York. Nonsense land. Again, but also I was biased. I really did not want to go for this procedure. And so that was 30 years ago. Thank God I have 4 kids and healthy as far as I know. And it's the Rebbe Oran, the Rebbe Bracha that completely saved my life.
So he was totally healed without any...
Yeah, and I had chemotherapy, but that's it. And again,
Thank God.
Rebbe is amazing, and we miss him very much, miss him truly, and I miss my father too.
100%. We miss him all, and I wanted, Rabbi Meni, first of all, thank you so much for this incredible. I actually have here many comments. I see here Rabbi Gurevich just writing us. I'm trying here to, Rabbi Gurevich, if you see, what an amazing and beautiful Rabbi, I really enjoyed it, very inspiring. And actually, he also writes us that he remember your father mistaking mayonnaise for ice cream. That's very possible. And we have, thank God for the opportunity to meet with you, and really thank you so much. And I want now to speak about the center, Steinsaltz, that you direct, and about the legacy of your father, and how it's possible for us to continue the legacy of your father, what we can do as a community.
So I'll give you, again, as we don't have all night, and I can talk about what I do all day long, and you can see I can speak.
Thank God, and we enjoyed it so much, and I immensely grateful to you.
Basically, the center has two focal points. One is the actual center when we are publishing, translating, and doing all the work of my father. My father did the full commentary on the 5 pillars of Judaism, the way we look at them. And so you have the Tanakh, the Mishnah, the Rambam, the Talmud, sorry, I missed that, and the Tanya. And our goal in the big level is to translate this thing to as many languages as we can. Again, with cooperation, everybody we can, and this is part of what we do. Then, according to what we find out, and we're still doing the full research on it, we estimate my father has between 70 to 80 more books that we can publish on variety of things. We have about 2,500 hours of video. The majority of them is my father teaching the essence of Chassidus, the essence of Chabad Chassidus, besides the Tanya, teaching Derech Mitzvotecha, Liktotera, and Teraor. And that is something, again, we'd like to publish in the future. That's one thing we do. And second things we do is we have a Hester Yeshiva, that's combining army service and advanced Judaic learning. That's in Tekoa. And this is the 2 main thing of what we do. I will offer everybody who's here, and you can reach to approach our website, which is, again, it's very simple. It's steinsaltzcenter.org. And over there, you'll see that for the next foreseen future, besides watching, you can watch the tributes we did for my father for his 30th day of his descent. We also we have there's a small form there you can fill that has a mitzvah you take upon yourself or learning that you want to do. And of course, there's also, if somebody wants to do, God forbid, somebody can also give a donation. There's
of your father and to continue his amazing work.
Yes, continuous work. And again, we hope that his word, and as we know, that the real nechama, the real condolences that one can give is to see appreciation of his work continue and influencing more and more people.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Meni Even-Israel. I remember it was a story when a Jew came to the Rebbe after his family was killed in the Holocaust, and he didn't want to marry again after his wife and children was killed. And the Rebbe told him, "You need to marry." He says, "Rebbe, I can't. It's too difficult." So the Rebbe looked in his eyes and tell him, "Anything left from your family?" And he looks in the Rebbe's eyes and says, "Nothing left." And the Rebbe looks at him again and says, "You're wrong. You left with the love, and you need to continue this love." Always when I was listening to your father, except of the genius and of your father, was always felt the love to people, the love to Jews, the love to every person. When I spoke to you today, I felt this love very much. And I only wish that may we always be able to continue the books of your father, the learning of your father, the vision of your father, the love of your father, and may his neshama with all Gedolei Israel up in heaven will continue the love, and pray for all of Israel, for all of us.
Amen.
And may you continue the legacy of your father and everything you do. And thank you so much again for this conversation today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Tanchumai.